Hi, my name is Cas Smith. I work at Ginkgo Bioworks as Director of Growth on the creative marketing team. And I'm pulling up my slides here for all of you to see. All right, great. So again, hi, my name is Cas. Yeah, we're going to be talking about in this session how to build with biology, but actually I'm gonna pull apart this a little bit. So okay. Ginkgo's mission, of course, is we make biology easier to engineer. That's our goal company-wide. Within the creative and marketing team that I'm on, we have a goal of helping people imagine a world made better with synthetic biology. And I put air quotes on better and that hard red asterisk on better because that word is loaded anytime it's used. And should be discussed and debated. And so I'm gonna actually strip it out in 1 second and we'll focus in, but just wanna point that out, that is our goal. Like we have an intention, we have intentions when we say better, but better deserves to be questioned because better compared to what? Who decides what better is? A close friend of Ginkgo's and collaborator named Daisy Ginsburg has a great thesis on this if you wanna read more about that topic. So for now, I'll just cast it aside and say, our goal definitely is to help people imagine a world made with synthetic biology. Cool, okay, fun, it's a good goal. But there's actually a challenge baked into that of we first need to make sure or ensure that people understand what synthetic biology is. So they can't dream, or it would be hard to dream about how we can imagine a world, or it'd be hard to dream about a world made with synthetic biology if you're not exactly sure what synthetic biology is. So first we need to make sure they understand what synthetic biology is. So how do we do that? We tell stories. Not that novel, but it's really impactful, we have found. And I recommend it to all of you. And so we tell stories to make biology, synthetic biology, more understandable. And in that way, we hope and we do work to help people understand how they could build or create or design with biology or with synthetic biology. So when I look at our work, it's a lot of this. It's on the creative and marketing team at Ginkgo. It's a lot of thinking about nature and science and society and technology and how they each impact and work off the other. And there's a lot of like recursive loops on each other. So it's complex, but there's no way around it. So when I look at this prompt, the session prompt of like, what's the future look like for building brands? The prompt is actually a hard one to answer directly. So I'm going to approach it from a different angle and I'm going to kind of strip some things out. I mean, who can definitively say what the future will be? It's hard for one person to predict that. But I can offer an argument for a good way to envision futures, are a good way to make sure any future that is imagined is a place we all want to be. So I would say this original, it gives us like a seed of an idea and then it leaps forward real quick. So I would say like, actually, let's just focus on like the seed of it. So I'm stripping out everything that I think is kind of jumps too quickly, too far. So really focusing in on the front end, on the back end. So it's like, what is the future? How do we get there? Or framed differently, how should we build the future? So rather than focusing on, what does it look like to build brands in the future? And like, okay, we're doing all these cool things with products and like, how do we get there? It's like, no, hold on. How do we even talk about building a future? Like, how should we get there? So that's really what I want to talk about. And, I see two components to that when we're talking about how should we build a future. One is, who is in the room, this imagined room building the future. And then do those people in the room, but also the people outside the room, do people understand what we're talking about when we say build with biology to make a product or a brand or a company? So do people have that understanding of what synthetic biology is, which goes back to our goal on our team at Ginkgo. So again, who's in the room? And do they understand what we're talking about? So it'd be kind of like a who and a huh. Who is like, all right, who's in the room? Who are you talking to? Who are you including in conversations? And are they leaving that conversation with understanding, or are they leaving it with like a, huh? I'm sure all of us have experienced that. We're in this really interesting space that can be difficult to explain. And so you want to avoid the huh reaction at the end. Okay, so let's talk about this more. So let's imagine a room. In that room, we're building the future. So that's pretty neat, pretty cool room to be in. So you're in there, you're dreaming up ways to use biology to make stuff. Great, cool, good start. You bring in other people. That's also a good start. Many brains are better than one. I think we all know that at this point. But if everyone in the room thinks the same, which I've represented using these emojis as like, it's all the cookie cutter brains, that's a problem. This room, we're asking, what is the future, or like, what should the future be, or how can we build the future? How can we build a brand that creates a future? That is huge. Creating futures is huge. It's high stakes territory or high risk. So I would say like our first stop in this process is to pause and take a moment to look around and be like, who else is in the room making decisions with me? Who have I included, or who have I excluded, either intentionally or by happenstance? And something else in this same moment where you stop to think about, and the reason it's important to think about these things is the future is for everyone. It's for you, it's for me, it's for everyone in the world, both living today and also in the future. And something I think people in this community or this space who are aware of synthetic biology, like we're also acutely aware of, like the future is also for every other living thing that's not human. So, we should not be taking a human-centric stance when we're also thinking of futures. We should be thinking about all living things. So pretty high stakes. So, okay, cool. You've started down the great path. You've brought people into the room. You've thought about, okay, I want an expansive brain power. Great. But you should actually probably not just an expanse or number of brain power, but you should probably have a diversity of thought. And so to me, that means a diversity of people. It should be second nature now to understand that inclusion matters. And it matters greatly. But in this endeavor, inclusion truly matters. It is one reason that including diversity of people really makes a difference. People have had to walk different paths in life, so they have different experiences and understandings, viewpoints, lenses on the world. And so if you can include people who have those different paths, or are presently still on different paths, you're going to be better suited to have these conversations about, what can we build with biology? You'll have entirely unique sets of eyes on problems. You'll most likely find new facets or aspects of problems that you didn't know existed. And you could even, your group could even see problems that you yourself don't see, and it contextualizes a bigger area for which you can work on. So there's many reasons to include people with diverse backgrounds, and I think this is really one great reason to do so. Another way to think about it is like, I've lived one life. I'm just one person. I grew up, I learned, I'm working from one perspective. At best I can be empathetic or listen to other people's stories and kind of catch glimpses of people's paths. But it's momentary. And also it's not the full depth of understanding. I've not truly walked that path. And you kind of never can. So it's a great way to bring in just entirely different ways of viewing the world. including people from varying backgrounds, like I said, allows you to see challenges and opportunities, problems from different dimensions that your brain just cannot, period. So it's really important to include diverse views to allow us to build futures. Because these futures that we're imagining should be places we all want. And so we should all be dreaming them up together, and we should all be building them together, or at least a diverse set of people should be doing that. So building futures, building brands of biology should look like a team effort. It shouldn't be a paternalistic prescription of like a small subset of people from a similar background or similar viewpoint thinking like this is the solution to this problem. Nothing's ever that straightforward. Everything's hairy, especially in biology. Please try to avoid hiring and collaborating with only people from your station in life or your background. That will most likely create futures not worth your time. Please don't create a crappy future for us. Create a really cool one that's awesome for everyone. There's a part of that of, okay, I should be including a lot of diverse people. I hear you, Cass. But like, how do I get those people into the room? There's two things I'll talk about. One, like, is very straightforward. Hire people that are unlike you and that are outside of your networks. They exist, they are out there. Hire people that are outside your domain to bring them in to have different viewpoints. Obviously, you want to find complementary skills, but definitely hire people, put them in leadership positions of power, so they have agency and are true stakeholders in this. So that's talking about like, how do we get people internally into this room? But also, like, we should think about people externally. And so thinking about people externally, that goes back to how do we help people imagine a world made with synthetic biology? So if there's this, imaginative room that we're doing this thinking in, we also need to be aware that it'll impact people external to this room. And so we essentially want to go back to telling stories. So, and this is, it has a nice positive feedback loop of, you can imagine that before you even get to the point of telling the story or dreaming up a future and telling a story about that future, you should be telling stories about what you want to create. Like, you want to set about using biology to create something. And the more of us that do that, will inoculate more minds with this idea of, we are creating things with biology, full stop. So like, we are trying to imagine futures. And just like putting that idea out there will attract those people that you want in the room and help you find those people. So, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing, but like, the more you start talking about what you're doing and what you're thinking about doing, and telling stories, it'll help you find people who want to join on that journey and who can then help you actually think about the bigger problems and solve and build products and brands. But importantly, telling stories also helps other people understand what we're doing in this space. And so stories look like what ifs. So at Ginkgo, we say things like, what if you could grow everything? I think, more generally, it's stories like what if, and we want people to dream up their own what ifs. I think Ginkgo says things like, what if you could grow anything, or using biology to design things. And that's great in the work we're doing. And we're still on our path. We're still finding out new ways to tell stories and new mediums to do it and new words to use. But I think like, we're trying to get to a place where we tell enough stories that people start to create their own stories of how they could use biology. So one way we do that is through Grow, which is Ginkgo's magazine we put out annually. So it's a collaboration between Ginkgo and Massive Science. Shout out to Grace on our team for making this wonderful piece of art truly, but also like a piece of pop culture in a way. So it's a magazine that tells the unfolding story of synthetic biology. Unfolding because we are, I think everyone here agrees that it's still an evolving story as to what synthetic biology is and what it can do. But we want to go back to, that what if. I want to get to a place where people dream up their own ideas of what synthetic biology can be used for. So I think back to, when I was introduced to synthetic biology, there was a particular set of language from particular individuals that I'm grateful for because it introduced me to the concept, but it was pretty prescriptive. And it worked for my brain. I came from, bioengineering, material science world. So big, grand messages of like synthetic biology can save the world, or we'll end our dependence on oil, or will rid us of litter. They worked for me. And while I think some of those statements could be true in some dimensions, or something like partly true, I think like in a way it's also prescriptive or narrow. So it's like the story that was told to me set me on a path of thinking about synthetic biology in a certain way. Some of it, a lot of it dealing with like the ills of the current system we're all a part of, which is capitalism. But I like to think, and I really want to push all of us to be talking about synthetic biology in a wider context. Because I believe that synthetic biology has wondrous things waiting to be dreamed up. So, like synthetic biology can do other things we haven't thought of yet. And I think there's a little bit of groupthink that can occur when we think about synthetic biology and what it should be, or what it like, oh, we can use it to do X and Y and Z. I think sometimes that can limit us in how we talk about it and explain it to other people. So it's a balance because we want it to be understandable. So we want, examples we know that we can share. But I think it's that is the challenge. Like in our storytelling, we should be pushing the bounds. And so an example of that, and something I think about, and actually this is now me getting into the territory of actually answering the question of, how do we get there? This is where I happen to live. I live in New York City. So the metro area you see, or part of it at least, is like 18 million people. Within the city, it's 8 million. So like, let's draw a circle on it. And that's like 10 million people. Okay. So like I'm one person, there's 10 million neighbors around me. I think about what if I am able to inoculate some fraction of those people around me with this idea of like synthetic biology is a thing. So via storytelling, what if, like, how can I reach them? Through what medium? Where can I reach them? What's going to stick? And so I think this is part of our work at Ginkgo to like think about this kind of stuff. And I think more of us in the synthetic biology community should do it because, again, going back to the planting the seed of synthetic biology is a thing, telling them that you can create something with it, telling them what ifs, they dream up their own what ifs. And then you have some untold number of people dreaming up how to use biology for designs, intentions, products, brands that we aren't even thinking of yet. So I think that's awesome. I think that's fascinating. I think it's really cool. And I think that's like where there's like so much potential out there of like, I see like the current applications and products where we're using synthetic biology to investigate is like a bubble. And like, it's within this much bigger bubble that like, we're only starting to poke at. So that's a hope for me. Another like future that I would love to see come true is you could imagine a door that exists in people's minds where, behind that door is a source of caring for the living world. So if you unlock it, people champion that living world. And so, this is connected to the thought of like, when people care about something in the living world, they naturally champion it, whether it's like a local park or a forest they visited growing up, or an insect or a frog they thought was cool when they were a kid, it sticks with them. They talk about it even decades later of like, oh yeah, I know this X fact about this thing. And there's something there's some amount of respect and championing it. And so what if through this process of storytelling, we can help people understand biology's beauty and awesomeness, and we spark some sense of caring for the living world. I think that would be an amazing result of people seeing organisms around them for what they are, this kind of wondrous bundle of information come to life. Each of those bundles, if you will, has some type of untold utility, which is human-centric, self-serving point of view, of like looking at genetic code as this kind of like instruction set waiting to do something for us. But like if you flip the switch in enough people's minds, you could have a future where there's a multitude of people caring deeply about life around them. And yes, maybe it is selfishly or self-servingly because they're looking at it as packets of genetic information. But they're fascinated by the potential function of these genomes, and hopefully they care for it, and they recognize that caring for the living world and biodiversity is worthwhile and something we should do. So why can't we dream of a future like that? But taking a dose of my own medicine, I recognize that this future that I'm talking about should be envisioned with other people. But I see it as a great way forward of like telling stories to get more people involved in understanding this thing we call synthetic biology, understanding that there's great value locked into our genes and genes of everything else, and acknowledging that this value, and in turn, hopefully turning that into action, whether it's dreaming up their own ideas of what biology could do, or action in the sense of caring for biology and how it's used. And generally just being champions of living creatures all around them and of biodiversity. Because I think, going back again to the original prompt of brands and biology and what are we going to build with biology, I think we need to be thoughtful of the future needs to have biology in it. We need the biology part to be able to do the building of brands with biology. So I'd love to see, through storytelling, a tipping point of more people caring about biology, understanding it, dreaming with biology, and kind of bringing that future into existence. But all of that requires storytelling first. So with that, thank you for listening to my story, and we'll turn it over to discussion, and then looking forward to the Q&A with all of you. Thanks so much.